Guys, I first met Alex McFarland about a decade or so ago at an apologetics conference that he organized. I think it was in North Carolina, but I'm not sure. Alex McFarland is the leader of Alex McFarland Ministries. He's co-author of 100 Bible Questions and Answers. He does a bunch of media. He's a youth culture and religion expert. His website, alexmcfarland.com. Hey, Alex, welcome. Great to have you. It's been a long time no see, as they say. But you've been busy out there fighting and also exposing the effect of cancel culture, particularly in the Christian world. Talk a little bit about how even the church is now being subjected to this kind of intolerance and shutting people down. It's going on even in the church, isn't it?
Well, it really is. And Dinesh, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to this. And I want to say what a great honor it is to be with one of the great minds of our time, yourself. It's a great honor to be with you. And I got to tell this quick story before we really dive into the topic. But I remember the first time you came and you graciously spoke at one of our conferences, and we were in Charlotte, North Carolina. We had over 5,000 people. You literally came straight from the airport, got out of the rental car, and walked straight to the podium. And I watched you for 55 minutes with no notes. You held the audience of 5,000 people captive. There were multiple standing ovations. And I was in the wings with a dear friend, Chuck Colson, that many of your listeners will recall. Chuck Colson and I were watching you from the wings, and Colson looked over at me and he said, "This guy is brilliant." And you were and you are, and to converse with you today is a great honor.
Well, that means a lot. Thank you so much, Alex. All right, so there's a lot going on with cancel culture. We know about it and happening out there in the publishing world and in the media, on social media. But people, we may not know as much about what's happening inside the orbit of the church, and particularly the Evangelical Church, which by and large you might think would be the most resistant to it. So talk about that.
Well, it's amazing to me how many within the church pastors are just being so compliant and rolling over and playing dead, when really we are called, if you're in ministry as I am, you are called to preach, quote, the whole counsel of God. And the Bible tells us things that we maybe don't want to hear, but we need to hear. And Dinesh, I could name names of people that say, you don't talk about homosexuality or transgenderism. You don't talk about responsible immigration policies or a free market economy. And sadly, the intellectual and spiritual gatekeepers, which are the people in the pulpits, they should be telling our nation hard truth right now. But sadly, in many cases, they're not doing it. And in fact, not only are many pulpits silent, but they're encouraging other ministers to be silent. And it really is jeopardizing the future of our country.
Alex, how would you answer? We've heard preachers who say something like this, that there is a core message of Christianity, and that core message is essentially very simple. No matter how much of a sinner you are, Christ died for your sins, and by accepting Christ, you open the gateway to salvation. And they say, well, we really need to focus on that, because there are other issues that are not unimportant, but they're secondary to this. And so if we start getting into the border, and we start getting into Ukraine, and we start getting into abortion, we're going to divide the audience on the peripheral issues, and that's going to dilute our core message. Well, how would you answer a pastor who in good conscience said to you, "Alex, I really want to focus on bringing people to Christ and saving their souls. We'll let the political stuff take care of itself"?
Well, Dinesh, and I've heard that many times, that's really kind of a Pollyanna worldview, because the fact is, if we don't speak to the cultural and social issues, then our opportunity to tell people about Christ will go away. I mean, as you and I both know, there were many ministers during the time of the American Revolution that talked about the justness, the legitimacy of the revolution. And if we had the crop of pastors from 2023 in 1776, we would have never had an America. So it might seem nice and appealing just to say, I won't sully myself with politics. I'll just talk about Christ. I get that. But the thing is, if we don't defend truth, we're going to lose the opportunity for free speech to tell others about Christ. C.S. Lewis, in his 1943 book, The Abolition of Man, talks about the mandate to speak about the cultural issues. And Lewis said, good philosophy must exist because bad philosophy must be answered. And it's up to the church to do that, to be not only the conscience, but really the intellectual center of the community.
Alex, one of the issues that you talk about, and this is in the specific context of an effort at Princeton to cancel the John Witherspoon, because the idea is, well, John Witherspoon has a checkered history with regard to slavery or race relations or whatever. And what you describe cancel culture as being driven by Presentism. Can you define what Presentism means and what's wrong with it?
Well, thank you, Dinesh. Presentism is a philosophy or ideology that it gives a lot of credit to our perspective right now, this minute, and we are at liberty to pass judgment because we somehow have some moral superiority that we pass judgment on all of history that ever came before us. And look, I love young people, but millennials and younger, there's just this high quotient of hubris in their perspective, and they want to cancel all the people that lived and died to give them freedom of expression and to save us from viewpoint discrimination. So Presentism says that I right now have all the answers, and I will stand above the fray and critique everybody who ever came before me. And basically, all of the figures of history that aren't as woke as me, we're going to censor them. It's fascism as applied to the public square, Dinesh.
And it seems like the corrective to it would be, if I can coin a phrase, something like contextualism. In other words, when you look at the past, you have to look at the circumstances that cause people to say and do certain things. It doesn't mean that you can't evaluate them or even pass judgment on them, but the judgment has to be an informed judgment and not start from the premise that I today am an enlightened, virtuous individual and they, living then, are sort of accountable to me. Isn't that right?
Exactly. Very well said. And that's just the arrogance of wokeism. I mean, it's the arrogance of wokeism. And we've seen this many times. And I've got to say, with Ray Bradbury in Fahrenheit 451 so many years ago, we saw that in school and we never thought something like that would happen. But this is like Fahrenheit 451 on steroids. And my goodness, when the left, I spoke last spring at a university in East Tennessee, and my goodness, whenever I would even invoke names like Abraham Lincoln or even John F. Kennedy, I mean, students today have been, by their, I would say, highly ideological young professors, they've been so skewed against anything historical. But I would say, Dinesh, this is actually a well-planned attempt to clear the field to the vacuum that will be created by the absence of all history, makes it possible for people to be controlled and for socialism/communism to be imposed on them. We erase our history at our own peril. And I know that so many people, they need to know our history. We're not saying that all of the founders of the country were perfect. We're not saying there haven't been misdeeds in past history. But as you said so well, the context helps us ameliorate our judgment and condemnation of people that, frankly, in many ways were morally superior than we today.
Great point, Alex. Hey, guys, check out Alex McFarland. His website is alexmcfarland.com. He's co-author of 100 Bible Questions and Answers. Alex, a real pleasure. Thanks for joining me on the podcast.
God bless you, my friend.